That's actually exactly what I talk about. If you don't know me, I'm Goodwill Cunting. I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland, Stokely, north of Ireland, and I'm using TikTok to get a book deal for my novel Influenced. It's come to my attention, because people have tagged me in it, a content creator has taken my videos out of context about the Irish immigration crisis. So I post about the corporate colonialism of Ireland. That is that 4 out of 5 homes purchased in Ireland last year was purchased by a corporate entity. And the Irish government is giving these corporate entities tax breaks in order to do this. Meanwhile, the far right, the racist far right, is on the rise in Ireland. And these people are blaming people of colour, immigrants to Ireland, for the difficulty in purchasing a home, when the actual problem is coming from the corporate colonialism of Ireland, the tax breaks that the Irish government are giving. Despite what this content creator has said, and she didn't mention the race element at all. My video was about the fact that 10,000 white Americans moved to Ireland last year, mostly upper middle class as well, moved to Ireland last year without any kind of backlash. Meanwhile, the Irish far right has been out in the streets protesting against immigration, and they've also been attacking people, burning people of colour out of their homes. Really bad things are happening. And yeah, I post about the hypocrisy of the racist far right. I also post about, like I say, the corporate colonialism of Ireland and Anglo-American, that means British and American allegiances, which are interfering in Ireland and diminishing the pro-Palestine solidarity that Ireland has long held. So yeah, American havoc is most definitely happening in Ireland, and Irish people need to remember that we are first and foremost an island that stands with oppressed people, especially the people of Palestine. It is anti-Irish to be anti-immigration. I'm Goodwill, I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland, Stokely, north of Ireland, and I am using TikTok to get a book deal for my book Influence. I've been speaking on here about the rise of the far right and just ongoing polarisation in Ireland in regards to politics, but in regards to our communities. And I've spoken about the way that we now inhabit a post-truth society, and that's one of those terms where you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But really, it just means that fact is obsolete. And yes, you could argue, have we ever lived in a society driven by fact? Well, somewhat. But we now exist in a society driven entirely by emotions, and that's a key point of post-truth society. It's society driven by like emotions, personal beliefs and values. It's only exacerbated by algorithms as well. And the far right in Ireland is on the rise, undoubtedly, and they do not care about being called racist. They do not care about being called scum. They do not care about being called any of the names that the hard left are putting onto them, hoping it'll shame them. And the writer Zadie Smith, who is a British writer but from a working class background, she's also of Jamaican heritage, from London, said in an interview a while ago that shame has a place and that actually it's not entirely a bad thing, because we now live in a society that is shameless and is ran by shameless people. And I agree with her. Ireland has never had this type of really crazed, hard right anti-immigration rhetoric. We have also never aligned ourselves with the fucking British. But now that's happening, and we are seeing a huge movement of people who are coming out to the streets and celebrating British mentality, British colonial mindset. Being Irish is nothing to do with being white. Being Irish is a state of mind. It is a feeling. It is, for me, spiritual, and it's about growing up in a place that has known the meaning of oppression and fighting it on the daily. And it is inherently anti-Irish to go out and join with people waving a fucking Union Jack on the street saying stop the boats. Irish people are entirely reliant on immigration. We have one of the biggest diasporas in the world for being such a tiny, tiny place. There's an Irish bar in every country, every city in the world. And it does not make any sense to be anti-immigration. It is anti-Irish to have that mindset. And the British are relying on the fact that we don't know any better. I have an entire account called Stop the Bots dedicated to the corporate colonisation of Ireland. I've never once said nor suggested that Americans are the reason that Ireland has a housing crisis. That's absurd. What I am talking about is the hypocrisy in the far right in Ireland, who are blaming black and brown people who are coming to Ireland, and they are saying stop the boats, they're saying Ireland's full, but they have zero interest in the 10,000 white Americans that came to Ireland. The housing crisis in Ireland is being caused by the corporate colonisation. 4 out of 5 homes bought in Ireland last year were bought by corporate landlords. That is hedge funds. I also wrote a Substack article on this last night called To Be Irish is to Protest, and it's literally about the corporate colonisation of Ireland, the rise of the far right, and the hypocrisy of the far right when it comes to Irish American immigration. What is driving the rise of the far right in Ireland, and what does the far right think that people of colour have done to them? If you don't know me, I'm Goodwill Cunting. I'm a writer and journalist from Northern Ireland, stroke the north of Ireland, and I'm using TikTok to get a book deal for my novel Influenced. I post on here about loads of different topics, primarily being a woman in Ireland, but I also post about the rise of the far right in Ireland. And this comment says, not that racism is ever logical, but what exactly is driving the rise of racism in Ireland? And what do they, the far right, think that we, this person's a person of colour, have done to them? So it's a very, very complicated issue. I do have a podcast going into this somewhat. So if you go to the link in my bio, it says listen in all caps. And the episode is called Stop the Bots. But there's a couple of things at play here. I would say the primary problem is that Ireland is economically fucked. So the Irish government, firstly, Ireland's split into 2 countries. So the north of Ireland is still part of the UK, Ireland is still colonised, and that's important to remember. The Republic of Ireland, the government has given huge corporations tax cuts to come to Ireland in order to boost the economy, but we all know that that just leads to corporate colonialism. And this is manifesting in loads of ways. For example, the government in Ireland was considering introducing water charges for what is a rainforest. Ireland is a temperate rainforest, although the trees got cut down by the British. So the fact that the government was thinking of introducing water charges is clearly absurd. Meanwhile, like thousands of litres of water an hour are being used for these like mega data centres that the Irish government have allowed corporations to build in Ireland for these tax cuts. Another huge problem is that the Irish government has no regulation on the purchasing of property. So 4 out of 5 homes in Ireland last year was purchased by a corporate landlord, which sounds like that could be one person with a couple of properties, but it's actually usually hedge funds or vulture funds, which is big groups of people who pull their money together and figure out how to make that money grow. And these people have decided that Ireland is a hot ticket for purchasing property. This has driven up the price of properties in Ireland, and it's led to a really rapid and rapidly worsening housing crisis. I know there's a housing crisis everywhere, but trust me, I have lived in a lot of different places. I live in London at the minute. I lived in the north of England, I've lived in Ireland, I've lived in New York, and the housing crisis in Ireland is pretty unprecedented in that the increase in rent has been astronomical in the last 10 years, which means that people are unable to buy homes and rent homes in the areas that they grew up in because corporate landlords are purchasing them. At the same time, Ireland has had an increase of immigration. Now, this is people of all different races. But what the far right are doing is they are facing their problems towards what they can see. And what they can see is an increase of people of colour. They're also very ignorant, these people, I have to say. So they're directing their anger towards vulnerable people, not the corporate landlords, not the rich Americans that are moving over, white Americans that are moving over, and not ultimately the government. It is the Irish government that is to blame for all of this. So while the government is selling Ireland, literally, to corporate entities, Irish people are disenfranchised, they are seeing wage stagnation, and they are struggling to rent and buy homes, and they're directing their anger and their vitriol towards vulnerable people. The last thing to note is, and I have a separate account all about this, 75% of online engagement in Ireland is bots, B-O-T-S, fake accounts. And it is my belief that those accounts are ran, for lack of a better word, by Anglo-American alliances. So you will know that Ireland is one of the political strongholds in like Western liberal democracy for Palestine. So these accounts that are pushing pro-American, pro-British, pro-Russian, yes, sentiment. Ireland has a lot of Ukrainian refugees. They are also having a terrible time with all of this. It's not actually only people of colour that are facing problems from the far right. The Ukrainian refugees are also being attacked. So you have this huge grouping of these mega power countries that are trying to diminish solidarity for Palestine and trying to diminish solidarity with Irish people for Ukrainians. I have a whole podcast about this, like I said. It's at the link in my bio. There's also an article that I've written called To Be Irish is to Protest, and it kind of breaks this down in more detail, especially in context of white American immigrants and the purchasing of Irish homes and the corporate colonialism in Ireland. I've used the phrase on here this week, proximity to whiteness. Not too much, because I don't like using that kind of language, but there was times where I had to use it. In relation, in particular, to Irishness. What is Irishness? Because sometimes Irish people say that Irish people aren't white and all that. And whenever I say proximity to whiteness, I don't mean being close to white people. That's not what it means. What it means is, how close are you to the people at the very top of the racial hierarchy, right? The people at the very top are upper class white people. Proximity means, how close can you get to them? Upwards. Also, when we talk about people doing things to give them proximity to whiteness, it means clambering on the people that are below them to get there. And I have a really perfect example. I've just been reading the comments on an article about an Irish 1,000 metre record has been broken by an Irishman who happens to be black. His name is Israel Olatunde. Hope I'm saying that right. Look at this comment. Israel Olatunde, such a fine traditional Irish name. Look who left this comment. Now, I don't know what language that is, but I'm guessing it's like Eastern European or something. This is exactly what people mean when they say proximity to whiteness. It's, how can I use where I am, how can I use the people here, or how I feel, to get me up. That's what proximity to whiteness is in one snapshot. And just to give it the context of what I was speaking about this week, this is what white Americans did in the States. So when they say that they were slaves too, they were using proximity to whiteness to get ahead.